Welcome everybody to the Vision Business Community. I have another personal friend of mine and raconteur and businessman by the name of Stuart King. He currently is the managing director of a company called Risk to Business, but he's had a lifelong history of running small businesses of different types. And he's not unfamiliar with the business landscape. Welcome to my little podcast, Stuart.
Pleasure to be here, George.
Now, Stuart, the purpose of this podcast is to, better inform our followers and our database on, how you're coping with the COVID-19 situation, both personally and in business. So, would you like to share?
Yeah. Once again, thanks for allowing me to share some thoughts to the community. I think it's an important time for us to reach out to each other and be connected.
Yep.
And share thoughts and ideas. And some of the things I say will resonate and some won't. That's fine. These are just, things that I have been thinking about. I'm a naturally curious person. And what I observe about the economy right now is that we are in a two-speed economy. Some businesses are booming. Some good friends of ours run a business called Merino Country up in Queensland. And for years they've been making high quality merino wool thermal underwear and t-shirts and garments for military and emergency services and also for the general public. And, up until December last year, they were experiencing some difficult times. And then along comes a virus and all of a sudden the Queensland Health Officer is looking for masks that they can't find. So this little business takes on 20 extra seamstresses. And, pivot is a better word at this time of our economy and our business, I think, rather than pivoting the whole business, but pivoting ideas.
Yep.
And they brought on 20 seamstresses to make washable masks.
Wow.
And they've had orders for 150,000. I mean, their business is booming because they were nimble enough to respond and they're taking on additional risk at a time when other businesses are kind of scrambling around and trying to hang on to their people and find new ways forward. So other parts of our economy are booming, other parts are not. And, those of us that are in businesses that are not booming, and Risk to Business had contracts in place to deliver face-to-face training throughout Australia. And of course, those had to stop because we have to practice social distancing. So what we have done as a strategy is to move to webinars. So, we moved to Zoom and we are now conducting webinars and we're getting the information out. So we're finding different ways. And fundamentally, I've always thought that, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And I have to be in action because if I'm not in action, then I'm in a place of uncertainty. And when I'm uncertain, I get anxious. I don't know whether you do, but I get anxious. And the thing about anxiety is that you get these thoughts that move through your mind, and often they're unrealistic. And the trick is to practice, cognitive thinking almost, and monitor what you're thinking. Because if you're not in the place of action and not in the place of creativity, then anxiety breeds and grows, and that just takes us into a downward spiral. So we have to look after ourselves in these times. But one of the things I try and do is to try and observe how I'm thinking and how that's affecting my mood and my energy.
Yes, I mean, but you are an introspective person, and you've been that by nature. And some people are probably discovering this for the first time. This situation is completely new to a lot of people. It's not so much to a couple of old war horses like us, but
But that's the thing, it's about being resilient, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, and having a sense of perspective.
Yeah, a sense of perspective is really important in these times. And there's something I wanted to share with you and the community is that there's a lot of us under 70 who have not experienced such adversity in our lives from a business point of view, but from a family point of view, and certainly from a lifestyle point of view. And I had a conversation with my parents who are in their 80s, and they're very, very sprightly, and we're very thankful for that. But I was talking to them about what we're experiencing in the economy and in the community, and they said, "Sure, we've seen this before." And I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Well, as kids, we were hiding under dining room tables and hiding in bathtubs with doors pulled over the top of the bathtub because bullets were falling from the sky in Britain, because there was this battle of a lifetime going on for Britain against the invading armies of Germany. And they saw this adversity, bullets falling from the sky. I mean, wow. And then, of course, they couldn't get food. They were experiencing fear and anxiety, and certainly they were fearful of dying or losing their family and loved ones. But they didn't know what the future held either. But here they are. They survived that. They had a family, and they jokingly say they don't know what happened. They had 3 kids. Now there's 32 of us. So I look at their experience and what we're experiencing, and I'm thinking perspective. That put it into perspective for me.
I bet they weren't rushing out to buy toilet paper when the bombs were dropping.
Because they may do. They may do, and they managed to get a bit of bread to go further, or a tin of salmon to go further, or whatever it is they had available to them. They just may do, and they had faith in their leaders. And I think that's important. In uncertain times, we need to have faith and trust in our leaders. And what I'm seeing of our leaders on both sides of politics, both federal and state, is a very responsible attitude to what we're experiencing.
Well, we're certainly in a lucky country, because there are many countries around the world that are not supporting their governments, are not supporting the population, or they're incapable of supporting the population. We are very fortunate, but your mentioning of being resilient and just making do, that's a nice segue into the way businesses need to cope right now. You've been coping with taking your business online. It's predominantly a service-oriented business, but do you have any advice for business owners in other industries, or have you observed anything that's been going on in your circle of friends amongst you?
Look, I mean, the first thing I observed was fear.
And panic.
And panic, and what do we do now? And they had their strategy in place, they had their budget allocated for the year, and all of a sudden it's gone to hell in a handbag in a matter of weeks. And the first place businesses went to, and in our other family businesses, we went to the same place, and that was, okay, what's our cost base? How can we get some certainty and longevity in a time when we need to focus on the four pillars of success that I subscribe to, and that is, cash, people, strategy, and execution. And so cash at the moment for business, and taking the costs out of the business as much as possible, was the focus 2 weeks ago. We've got that under control now, and we have a way forward, but it's still going to be really, really tricky. And thankfully, the JobKeeper allowance is enabling our businesses to keep moving forward and keep our people connected with the business. So we've been reducing hours of them paying them, having them work to the 1,500. That's our model that we're going to go forward with. I think the problem we have from a strategy point of view is that the virus is one thing, but the biggest problem we have is, how long is this going to go on for? And
yes, that's the unknown.
It is the unknown. There's great fear about a second wave. And I think our leaders have done incredibly well, and as has our community done incredibly well to reduce the numbers of infection and to flatten the curve and get ahead of it. And we're seeing really low levels of infection right now, and fortunately, decreasing deaths. Compared to other nations, we've been very, very successful in keeping those numbers down. But there could be a second wave. And what a lot of people in business don't realise, because it's not the world that they've been in. I had a 30-year career in policing in Victoria, as you know, and one of the things that occupied a lot of my time in the last 10 years of my career there, up until 2008, was planning for a pandemic. And, in Victoria, where I was working at the time, there was the biggest poultry farming population in Australia. So we did a lot of testing and modelling and planning and testing of those plans for a pandemic breakout of avian flu, for example.
Right.
So what it's important for businesses to understand, I think generally the community, is that there has been this deep level of planning going on in our emergency services, which is highly coordinated. So the systems and processes and people are in place to actually bring an effective strategic response to this sort of thing. So, I'm very confident that because I've had first-hand experience in planning for those things, that those plans are available and will be and are in fact being implemented. So that's a positive thing. So if we can set aside our fear about what's going to happen because our leaders have got it, they've got our backs, then we can focus on our business strategy and how we're going to flip our model or move forward in a different direction or try and access different markets, because we don't have to be worried about that.
Yep.
We still don't have a timeline, which brings uncertainty. But as we emerge from this virus, I think there are going to be new ways of doing business. I think.
What do you see?
I think people initially thought, "Oh, great, we're working from home," but when the kids are home too and the other partner's home, that can bring challenges to the environment and to productivity. And I think a lot of people are finding it a lot harder now than they first thought. I do think we're going to see impacts on commercial leases. I think one of the lucky things for us is that we did not have a commercial lease in one of the family businesses. We actually had we were buying seats on a monthly basis for 100 people for one of our businesses, and we were able to walk away from that with 2 weeks' notice. Not good for the shared space, but good for our business because it gave us straight away some certainty around cost and reducing some costs. So I think we will see a different hybrid of working, and what we're exploring is the idea of having a smaller workspace that's permanent and bringing teams in and out of that space and having remote hubs to keep our cost base down, but still to have a place to call home where we can bring people together and experience the culture of the organisation, for example.
Well, that kind of thinking would be sending shivers through commercial leasing agents and landlords.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't be a lone ranger there. I think a lot of corporations are discovering that for themselves.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people are saying, well, do we really need all that money going out for corporate headquarters when we can actually have remote teams doing what they're doing now? So we've sort of been forced into new ways of thinking, which is a great opportunity for us at a time when everyone's experiencing a hiatus, or hibernation as it's being called. It's a great opportunity to reassess what the strategy is and how that's going to be executed. So, cash is always important. Having enough cash to weather the storm, or make arrangements where you can finance against future sales, for example. Those sorts of things are being considered now. Banks are very supportive. They've been very supportive of us and our businesses. 6 months down the track, if there is another stimulus package required, I think the Australian government's got the money to be able to do that. So we need to be confident that there'll be further stimulation if required. But we need to actually take responsibility and be accountable for how we move forward. We've been given a lifeline by the government, and we actually have to take responsibility for moving our businesses forward in a different way and quickly. So cash is important. Getting the right people in the right positions, in the right locations is going to be important, and readdressing the strategy to access those new or emerging areas of demand that will bring some growth to your business are going to be important, and also how you execute that. And I think, I like the word execution because it's a very positive action, but it requires absolute focus. And I think for those of us that have been in business for a long time, we see a lot of businesses fail because they don't focus.
Well, it's one of those things about the landscape changes so much, when the business landscape changes so much, business owners are fighting hard just to keep their head above water, or so they believe, right? And they do go into a state of panic, and panic kills any possibility of creativity, or stopping to think about, hey, where do I need to take my business? How can I come up with the cash, the people, the strategy, and the execution? How can I do that? Now that requires heavy thinking, it requires workshopping, it requires communication, it requires a bit of dedication, which I think a lot of business owners right now, particularly in the small business sector, feel that they don't have the time to do, because they're just fighting hard to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
What would be your recommendation there?
My recommendation would be breathe. Just breathe. And access people who you trust as advisors, or you think may be able to add some value, like accessing these Zoom meetings and podcasts and so on. I'm listening to a lot of podcasts when I'm out walking, exercising. So I'm not just exercising, I'm actually using that time to be curious and think. I've actually stopped reading. I've stopped reading the news because
great. That's good. That's good advice.
I just found it was too depressing, and I just thought, okay, I'm not being productive. I've got to get in action here. And so I started talking to my customers, and they have helped me too, and they've been very supportive. Small businesses, what do we do? Focus on one thing. Choose one thing a day that you're going to absolutely execute on with endeavour and clarity, and just use that one thing. And then the next day might be another one thing, but each step forward is a new step towards a new way of being and a new way the business can operate. This is a moment in time. This is not going to be forever, and we just need to be able to move forward in a way that still accesses our community of customers, stays connected.
Yes.
So that when we are ready to relax the social distancing laws, we can bring people back into our restaurants, back into our coffee shops, back into our retail shops, outlets, all those places where we need people to go. That will happen again. So this is a moment in time. So just breathe. Have faith in our leaders that the right things are being done. We will recover from this. I do think our borders are going to remain closed for a long time, which is a good thing. And part of it being an island, it'll give us some control over those imported cases of the virus. I read today with some interest there's a conversation going on at a very early stage of creating an Anzac bubble between Australia and New Zealand, and opening up some trade opportunities between New Zealand and Australia, because we can, given our distance from the rest of the world, we can actually control who comes into the countries a lot easier than, say, Europe, that has borders that are quite porous. So, that's a big thing in our favour. But I do think moving forward, our borders are going to remain closed for a long time. And what that gives us is an opportunity to focus on a few things in Australia. One is, we need to buy Australia for Australia and be for Australia. So this focus on an increased nationalism in business is going to be a positive thing for a lot of businesses. So how do we access, products and services that are going to be take Australia forward in a better way, a new way. So tourism is going to drop away, of course, and those sorts of things which will impact on us. But maybe we'll have more domestic travellers of Australians once the travel bans are lifted. So I think what's occupying my mind and what I think about George daily is, okay, what's the environment like at the moment, and what's emerging from that as possibility? And I just shared with you my thoughts about, okay, so if we're closing our borders and we're focusing on increasing, say, manufacturing in areas of emergency and essential items, then there's opportunities there for business, right? So if you've got if you've got an area of a workshop, or you can move into that sort of development of creating masks or whatever it might be, then there's opportunities there. So I think what people in business are really good at are creativity and thinking about how can I do things differently and what is an opportunity for me. People who think business, is easy, obviously never a burning business. And I always chuckle when people say, "Oh, you got it easy. You're in business." It's bloody hard, and there's never a dull moment, but it doesn't make it any easier. But I think out of this adversity, there will be opportunities in a new economy within Australia with this sort of national focus and emphasis on by Australian, for Australian, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. I think a lot of this reliance on international suppliers has shown how fragile our economy is.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of manufacturing will open up again in Australia.
Yeah, I'm hopeful about that too. And I think
That's good.
the supply chain, security of supply chain, we've kind of had a race to the bottom, haven't we?
We have.
With price. If it's all been on price, which is not always. There's a balance between price and quality, but Chinese labour is increasing cost. Maybe we have to look for other areas. I was fortunate enough to be in Vietnam last year and saw what's happening there and where their focus is. And I think Vietnam is poised to be a very good source of labour and alternative supply chain manufacture. They don't particularly have great connections with China, but they're very proud of what they're doing in Vietnam, and they're quite a forward-thinking country. So that is something that's occupying my mind as well as potential opportunities as an alternative to China.
Great. So any final parting words for people, like if they wanted to indulge themselves in your services, maybe explain a little bit about them and how they can contact you?
Great, thanks, George. Well, Risk to Business is a business that protects people and brand and reputations from workplace behaviours that either unlawful or counterproductive, and present a risk to the company. I know how hard it is to build a great business and great brand, and it can be really adversely affected and almost trashed, in a matter of moments by an employee that doesn't share the values and the vision of your business.
Mm-hmm.
So we conduct workplace investigations and training around compliance to prevent discrimination, sexual harassment, workplace bullying, those sorts of things. We also do a lot of policy reviews and systems reviews, and we do a lot of oversight of internal investigations. So, for example, one of our clients came to us recently and they said that we're doing the investigation, but we'd like you to have the oversight of that to bring in a level of independence. So that's the kind of thing we do. So we are a national business and we can work anywhere. And part of our training, as I said earlier, we are moving to a webinar based. How it goes, I'll let you know in a few weeks. But we had about 30 face-to-face training sessions booked around Australia, so we're having to ramp up our response.
Pedal pretty hard.
But we're doing it, and we're confident we'll deliver a good product. So Risk to Business, you can contact us through the website or through Office HQ, who is our reception service. That's another way we've taken the cost out of our business. We actually outsource our reception function, which is good. But also, the last thing I want to say is, I want to reiterate, this is a moment in time. And one of the points you gave me, George, was, how do we sort of inspire and give people hope? Well, I do hope I've inspired some people to think differently about business, but and what opportunities are coming. But hope is not a strategy. So focus on those four things: cash, people, execution, strategy, and execution, and look for new opportunities for customers as we move into this new Australia. With closed borders, because people are still going to need things. They're still going to need things in their supply chain, and industries, be it health, be it education, education is going to have to do something pretty radical to sustain the model that it has, particularly at tertiary levels, for example.
Yep.
So if you start thinking about industries like that, you start thinking, okay, wow, they can't sustain themselves without the international students. So how's that an opportunity for me? How can I assist them? There may be a technical application for that. There may be a completely different model. I don't know, but yeah, that's what I'm encouraging people to think about.
Stu, on that note, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. It's been very enlightening, and you're right. You're very positive, but there always is two sides to a coin.
Yeah.
So if you look for those opportunities, they will appear. So thank you very much for your time, Stu. Thank you, and hope to see you. We'll list this on our website and our social media platforms, and hopefully we'll get a positive response. Thank you.
I look forward to the critique. I'm all good with the feedback. And good luck to everybody. Thanks, George.
Thanks, Stu.